it's me, Joe, and I'm back with another reaction. And we are back with the final episode of the Hunting the Bismarck group of videos by Extra History. And, like I said, after this, I will be holding a vote based on... I've seen a few people asking comments about certain series of videos that they've done about certain individuals and certain such. So I will be holding a vote for that currently on YouTube, because I know a few of you aren't on my Discord just yet. Speaking of which, before we get this video started, make sure you like and subscribe, turn on notifications, and follow me on all my social media, which is down below. Follow me on Twitch, Twitter, Patreon, and Discord. All in the description below. Alright, this is it. The Sinking of the Bismarck. Oh, and be sure to stay tuned till the end, because I'll be doing my own little, talking about the Bismarck and some of the unknown facts. So let's get this started, shall we? In 3, 2, 1, and play.
A flight of swordfish speeds east toward the Bismarck. The hope of the Royal Navy rests on their wings. This episode is sponsored by Wargaming. New players can download World of Warships and use the code EXTRA1 for free goodies. Link in the description. 20-47 hours. The 15 swordfish pilots know that this is their last shot. Soon it'll be dark, and by dawn the next day, the Bismarck will be in range of the Luftwaffe air bases on the French coast. No one else can get here in time. They sight the Bismarck and start their attack run, coming in piecemeal after losing formation in the clouds. They fly low, some only 50 feet above the cresting waves. The Bismarck lights up with anti-aircraft fire, filling the air so thick with shells that the pilots hunch in their open cockpits. Crewmen scream as shrapnel tears their unprotected bodies. One swordfish takes 175 hits. But they don't go down. Torpedoes hit the water. One strikes Bismarck on its thick armor belt. The great ship weaves and dodges. Huge waves send the tin fish at crazy angles. One pilot is about to loose when he hears his navigator yell, "Not now!"
Not yet!
He turns to see the man hanging upside down from the side of the plane, judging wave patterns so that the torpedo runs straight. "Okay, let it go!" It's a textbook shot, 2 ship lengths ahead. The Bismarck makes an evasive turn, but the torpedo strikes its stern. There's a blast of flame and water. But the great ship sails on,
That pilot actually stayed alive
As the
long
bloodied
enough to tell his
swordfish crews
story.
climb out of their aircraft, they report that they've failed. But a report comes in saying that the Bismarck is behaving erratically. She hasn't recovered from her evasive turn and has circled northwest into the wind and directly away from the French coast. The torpedo knocked out her steering. The pilots erupt in
It
celebration.
didn't just knock out the steering,
The 27th of May, 00 hours on the King George V. Admiral Tovey finally has the opportunity he's needed to close the jaws on Bismarck. Over the last few hours, he's ordered destroyers to bracket the ship in order to ensure that Bismarck doesn't escape again. A few have harassed it with torpedoes, one Polish destroyer flashing the message, "I am a Pole," while firing, but mostly they're keeping their distance. There'll be no night attack, Tovey decides. Catching up will cost precious fuel, and Bismarck has proved too dangerous to fight in less than ideal conditions. He'll wait until morning. 08:45 hours, 48 degrees 10 minutes north, 16 degrees 15 minutes west. For the first time since beginning this mission, Tovey sees Bismarck with his own eyes. Behind him is the HMS Rodney. The Rodney is old, slow, and leaking below decks, but its 16-inch guns are the largest in the Royal Navy. Though barely able to maneuver, Bismarck's guns are still fully operational. Tovey's plan is to approach Bismarck from all sides, forcing the ship to split its fire between his 4 ships, the battleships King George V and Rodney, and the cruisers Dorsetshire and Norfolk. But first, the battleships must drive in hard from the west with only their forward turrets firing, the same maneuver that doomed the Hood. The Rodney opens fire at a range of 12 miles. Spray leaps up in front of the Bismarck,
And those
high enough that it
16-inch
spoils
shells
the
were
targeting
nothing
on
to
King George
sneeze at.
V's first salvo. 3 minutes later, Bismarck answers, its opening salvo landing all around Rodney. Back and forth the 3 ships trade fire, the Rodney and King George V plunging forward at top speed in the heavy seas. The pace renders the Rodney's engine room nearly uninhabitable. Crewmen hose her overheating boilers down with seawater. Every salvo blows the boiler doors open with a rush of flame. and each curtain of fire from the Bismarck creeps closer to the Rodney. On the Bismarck's third salvo, fountains of water bracket the old ship. Shrapnel lances through her superstructure. The Rodney is dead to rights, expecting a hit. But then she fires. The 16-inch shell smashes into Bismarck's main fire control director. Her guns fall quiet in the absence of orders. The British battleships turn and split up, surrounding the Bismarck, pounding her with broadsides from two angles. After a pause, the Bismarck turns slightly to put King George V in view of its undamaged aft fire director, its salvos barely missing Tovey's flagship. But the British have found their range. 3 minutes after her first hit, Rodney nails Bismarck's B turret, penetrating the armor with a blast so powerful the concussion temporarily knocks neighboring A turret out of action. Bismarck's counterfire dwindles, each turret firing erratically and independently. Now even Tovey's cruisers have joined the pummeling. The 8-inch guns of Norfolk and Dorsetshire are too small to sink the Bismarck, but they tear through its unarmored upper decks. The Bismarck's superstructure begins to come apart. An ammunition locker explodes. The fire director station flies through the air like a kicked can. Flames reach as high as the mainmast. The bridge collapses forward. By 0930 hours, Bismarck's 4 great turrets have fired their last salvo, and shots from her secondary guns dwindle. The Rodney closes to point-blank range, 2,000 yards, and begins slamming broadsides into the hull. 3 fires rage on Bismarck's deck. Holes appear in the upper hull. So many shells are pounding the bow that it's red hot, hissing with steam every time it plunges into the heavy sea. Watching through binoculars, Royal Navy officers see a little trickle of men emerge from Bismarck. They run along the deck, sheltering behind the blasted turrets or jumping in bunches into the sea. For many of the British, it's the first time they've seen the enemy. It sickens them. German sailors try to signal surrender, but the next volley cuts them down. Aboard the Rodney, a chaplain tearfully begs the ship's captain to stop, but their orders are clear. The Bismarck must be sunk. Yet the ship stubbornly refuses to go under. Tovey's ships circle, hammering her with every weapon they have, pounding away until the stress of their guns shatter windows and open leaks in their own ships.
All the stuff on the outside.
For 50 minutes, they dismember the Bismarck, firing over 2,800 shells. At 10:21 hours, the guns go quiet. Tovey's ships have expended so much fuel that they're in danger of not being able to get back home. Tovey orders his ships to make for Scapa Flow. The Dorsetshire will finish the Bismarck. Dorsetshire moves to point-blank range and fires 2 torpedoes into the Bismarck's starboard side and another into the port side. The pride of Hitler's fleet heels over, her lower hull glowing from internal fires and gradually sinks by the stern. Within 15
like I said,
seconds,
wait till the end,
she's
I'll
gone.
explain this.
The Dorsetshire throws nets over its side to pick up German survivors. Her sailors try to haul as many as they can aboard, but some are badly burned or missing limbs. Safe on deck, crewmen hand their half-frozen enemies rum and hot cocoa, pity eclipsing their anger over the loss of the Hood. But then a lookout spots a U-boat periscope. German submarines are known to converge on sinking ships, and in order to save his crew, the Dorsetshires captain gives an unthinkable order. Unless they want to join the Bismarck, they must get underway. The ship begins to pull forward with hundreds of wailing men still floating around her. Some cling to the nets as she begins to move, losing their grip and drifting to stern as she gains speed. 2,200 men served on Bismarck. Only 114 survived. The time is 1200 hours. Churchill tells Parliament that the Bismarck has been sunk. The news goes out via radio minutes later, greeted by 3 cheers in the Bletchley Park canteen. It's a major victory for the codebreakers, proof that their program can deliver results. The victory comes at a crucial time. It distracts the press from Royal Navy losses in the Mediterranean, and signals to the U.S. Congress, still divided over American convoys, that the Royal Navy can defend American shipping. In Germany, propagandists spin the Bismarck's sinking as a noble last stand, but Hitler receives a different message. He's never trusted naval power. Capital ships are too expensive, too vulnerable to air raids, and their loss is too public. Plus, they gobble up Germany's limited fuel resources. The Royal Navy could have the Atlantic. From now on, he would use his capital ships defensively, and employ U-boats to harass convoys. After all, his focus was needed elsewhere. In 3 weeks, Germany's forces would invade the Soviet Union, and he'd have plenty of time to deal with the troublesome English once he'd captured Moscow. Or so he thought. Thanks again to Wargaming for sponsoring these episodes. Fair sailing, everyone. If you happen to be watching from Europe, check out the Extra Credits Choice Bundle in the World of Warships Premium Shop. Link in the description.
And that ends a very fun series. Now, my fun little history bit. So, this one's all about the final Battle of the Bismarck, and it actually has some pretty cool little moments. Like, starting with a very unknown fact about Rodney. She was a battleship equipped with torpedo launchers. Yes! And she used them in the Battle of the Bismarck. She is the only known battleship to score a successful torpedo hit. Not a lot of people know that. I didn't even know it until a while ago. And I found out from it thanks to a meme video. Because of course I did. But yeah, funny little fact. Now, on to Bismarck. There's actually, like I said, there's an interesting story with her sinking. And it actually comes to an interesting question. After they were done pulling sailors Bismarck survivors out of the freezing cold waters of the Atlantic, they began and people began discussing like, oh yes, the Royal Navy, we sank it, the Dorsetshire sank her with torpedoes. The German sailors began to pipe up. They said the British didn't sink the Bismarck. They said they had sank their own ship. That is correct. For several decades, there was a shadow of doubt over who really sank the Bismarck. Was it the Royal Navy, or was it the German sailors scuttling their own ship? No one really knew the answer because the shipwreck was not discovered until the 1980s by none other than Robert Ballard, the guy who found the Titanic. But even then, she was kept a secret. Her location was kept secret until she was discovered much later. Or should I say rediscovered. And unfortunately, when Ballard found her, he could not do a detailed survey of her wreck. There was no detailed survey. They didn't even know what condition she was in. They couldn't tell much. It wasn't until much later, in the early 2000s, that a detailed survey of her wreck could be determined. And thankfully, she was upright. She's an upright wreck, even though she did capsize when she sank, basically causing most of her distinguishing features, her turret, her superstructure, to be knocked away. But the core of her is still there. And so the biggest question everybody was asking was, who sank the Bismarck? Was there evidence of torpedo damage from the Dorsetshire? Or was there no damage whatsoever? Now, they found significant damage to her superstructure and upper decks. No question about it. It literally looks like a wasteland. But then they looked below the deck. They found everything they needed to, but then they found something quite interesting. They found torpedo damage on the Bismarck's hull. But upon further inspection, basically they found giant, basically sections of her lower hull completely missing. And what they while finding those pieces somewhere else in her debris field, what they discovered was basically when the torpedoes knocked holes in the Bismarck's hull, and as she sank, the holes caused those parts of the hull to be basically shredded off. Which leaving a big hole. However, that was just the outside of the hull. The Bismarck, in fact, German ships at the time had a system called turtleback armor. Basically, you can probably imagine it, turtleback armor. It's an armor that's basically shaped like a turtleback. The section, upon inspection, inside those giant torpedo damage holes of her outer hull, they determined that the turtleback armor held. They looked all around the area of damage. There was no structural damage to the inner turtleback armor. The turtleback armor, which was designed to protect the core of the ship, the engines, the command staff, the magazines, had held. which means all evidence points to the German sailors scuttling their own ship. But now comes the big question. Why? If they could literally just sit and take the punishment, which they were clearly doing, the British ships were basically pounding this ship, and they would not get through. None of their shells, not even the 16-inch shells of Rodney, could pierce that armor. They could do a lot of damage to the superstructure and the outside armor, but they couldn't pierce the core. So literally, all the Germans really kind of had to do was just hang in there and wait the British out. So the question is, why didn't they? Quite simple, really. According to the German survivors, they wanted the pummeling to stop. They were getting torn to shreds. So they knew they weren't going to be. They probably found out pretty quick that the British had no intention of taking the Bismarck as a prize. They wanted her dead. They wanted her at the bottom of the ocean. And they decided to stop the relentless pummeling so that way they could get the hell off the Bismarck. They decided to scuttle their own ship to put an end to the misery and hopefully get off. And quite frankly, I can't blame them. And that is the end of the Bismarck. Now, Bismarck did have a second sister. There was the Tirpitz, Bismarck's sister. And after the Bismarck sank, like they said, Hitler ordered her completely, kept in reserve. They kept her hidden. And she scared Churchill just as much as the U-boats did. Which is why I'm surprised they haven't done a series of videos on the Tirpitz yet, on her sinking. Because, god damn, is it ever if you want the ultimate James Bond super spy technique stories to try and sink one ship, look no further than the story of the Tirpitz. That is espionage done. I'm surprised it hasn't been made a movie yet. Or at least the inspiration for a movie, because there is so much cloak and dagger, espionage, secret planning, secret weapons. There is so much stories with the Tirpitz, it's incredible. And also, after Bismarck sank, they upgunned the Tirpitz. They put more anti-aircraft guns. They even put torpedo launchers on the Tirpitz. They did so much. And that's pretty much it. If you actually want more information, in fact, some of the information I received, there's two great documentaries I can truly recommend to everybody. And the best thing is you can find them here on YouTube. It's really great. There is the Battle of the Hood and Bismarck. That is a great documentary. I love it to death. It's literally what got me interested in these two ships to begin with. And then there's the 2002 James Cameron. Yes, that James Cameron! And he did a documentary and did the survey on the torpedo damage that they found. That was done in 2002, and it is a great documentary. I highly recommend it. Oh, I also forgot to mention something pretty flippin' cool a few episodes back from this. Back when the Prince of Wales was fighting the Bismarck and her bridge was hit, there's actually something crazy. One of the survivors of the hit Bismarck caused on Prince of Wales Bridge, one of the survivors ended up playing the captain of the Prince of Wales in the Sink the Bismarck movie. I kid you not. If you go watch the movie Sink the Bismarck, I recommend it. It's here also on YouTube. And you see the captain of the Prince of Wales, he was there. Yeah, I can't believe I'm so pissed I didn't mention that back then. Anyway, this was a great series, and I can't wait to set up the poll for the next one. I will set, I've seen a few you go for your Yi Su Shin, which is pretty cool. I love Admiral Yi. Come on, anything that has to do with naval power, that's my forte. But there's other ones that I think I'll put in there. I'll put at least probably 3, including Admiral Yi. I'll put 2 more suggestions just to see what everybody wants. But until the next video, you know who I am. I know who you are. I will see you all in the next video. Come, puppies. Let's go. Let's go. You know what? Let's go watch that documentary again. It's my favorite.